Here we go. Shall we? Oke, bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Sahabat-sahabat, mari kita tundukkan wajah hati kita sejenak, memohon pada Allah Ta'ala. Kita mulai dengan basmalah dan salawat. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammad. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli waj'ali waziran min ahli. Selamat datang di kajian suluk online edisi spesial. Hari ini kita kedatangan tamu dari Amerika. Ya, nanti you have to introduce yourself. Yeah. Even though some people, ada beberapa di sini yang sudah tahu siapa beliau. So hello Ashley, welcome to Amsterdam.
Hi. Nice to meet you.
So yeah, tell us about you, like short introduction. Some of this just recently know your, yeah. Who are you?
So I'm Ashley Wu. I live in Birmingham, Alabama, USA.
Yes.
I've been on a path seeking the way and understanding the path of the soul and to grow with Allah since I was very small. And sometimes in your life a lot of stuff happens and sometimes it seems like not a lot happens. And lately there's been a big jump.
Yeah.
As I found.
Okay. So sedikit perkenalan Ibu. Ini Ashley ini dari Birmingham. We have Birmingham in UK. In English, but in Birminghamnya Alabama di Amerika. It's like how many hours you got it? 8 hours. Kalau naik pesawat 8 jaman lah sampai Amsterdam. Saya bilang kalau belajar di Indonesia aja sekalian jauh. If you go to Indonesia, it takes like 24 hours or something.
More than that.
Last time was 40, right? Because you...
It's very long.
Wow. Terakhir dia ke Indonesia untuk syahadah, baru bulan November lalu, itu dia harus menempuh perjalanan 40 jam karena harus transit. He was in Korea, right? You were there. So, kita mau mengenal figur seorang mu'alaf yang aktif di agamanya dulu dan mendapat tauhid dari Allah Ta'ala. Gimana perjalanannya dan lain sebagainya. Sangat inspiring, sangat menggugah, sebuah contoh hidup bagaimana kalau orang mencari Allah, mau jauh, mau itu sendirian, Allah datangkan dan Allah bukakan saja buminya. So, yeah, tell me about the path. I mean, you told me about you want to seek the path of your soul. Ever since you're little. How little were you?
Yeah, I remember being, 4 and
4.
asking,
it was like kindergarten.
Where are the teachers? They're supposed to be teachers.
TK,
what
were you with 4-year-old? I mean, what is what was 4-year-old Ashley? Like 4-year-old, I was still playing with my stuff. I don't think I'll start to.
Yes, I did. But also I spent a lot of time alone. And so I play outside, and I was always talking to God. But some of us are a bit, I think a bit strange. I've heard other stories that sometimes it happens.
Story.
And then, I went to school. And I was, there was a period that I was kind of popular, or and so I would just like people would just I had this
you're introvert, you're more like people.
Yeah, well then I had this group of friends and we would do all these things.
So you have your social crowds,
and then it was like, okay, wait, to have power, to have influence, like. What does that mean? And what does it mean? But like
it got you.
It did something to me. And so I actually, I stepped out and then I kind of really pulled back. I was like, I need to learn.
But your friend must be wondering, like, what happened to you? Like you suddenly pull yourself
about
back.
A year after that, I changed schools. So it actually helped my journey.
What reason?
It was for academic reasons.
I see.
Yeah. So it helped the journey. But I was in general, I was not happy. I felt a lot. I felt my feelings. I felt other people's feelings. I felt the weight of the world.
You're not happy.
I went to church all the time. and
try to just fill in the void, or
there was a place I felt safe, and
safe
there were
place for you.
times that I would go that like this light would come in me and around, and I would feel it, and I would feel Allah, and I didn't know, I could never knew what made it happen or why or whatever, but it felt like home.
Wow. And where was it? Church?
It would always at church.
Always at
different
church.
places.
Okay.
Yeah, there. Yeah, and I was telling you, I also was very close to Prophet David when I was little. I don't know why. I just felt somehow, in the story, he is the youngest son. He's the one that doesn't seem chosen. He seems like he was probably lonely too. And he would go out with the sheep by himself. Yeah, somehow God taught him, so how he can teach me.
Right.
Yeah, so I used to write down the Psalms. Yeah. Do things. And but then we're a child, you need to respect our parents, and find a career and all of this.
You move on with the mainstream, so you have to go academically. It's like
I did music, I did academic stuff. Actually, when I was a teenager, the academic, I liked it, but it also was a way to shut down a lot of the other stuff I was feeling. It just go in the mind.
Okay. Before my memory got, I need to translate. Okay. Pouring in. Okay. So Bu ya, jadi dia sejak kecil, memori dia katanya sejak umur 4 tahun udah mulai gelisah. What was a 4-year-old think about? What was it? You remember, like you miss God, or you send balloon like me, like writing?
I felt like I was supposed to be in a school. Like there is a school, there are teachers, they're supposed to be a way, they're supposed to train you from beginning and middle and all. Inside, I think this is
so something missing. I mean, you want to be in that, but you're not.
Yeah, and I understand now because it's very tied to my soul's work. That was what I was hearing, is to find it.
Ya, jadi panggilan tuh datang dari hatinya. Ada sesuatu yang kurang gitu mulai sejak kecil 4 tahun. Sekolah juga sempat jadi orang yang populer gitu ya, tapi kok aku nggak happy, dia bilang. Setahun setelah itu dia mulai menarik diri, dia lebih senang merenung gitu ya. Kebetulan pindah sekolah. Tapi kemudian kan yang namanya anak sekolah kan ada maybe a pressure from parents as well. I mean, like you have to study, like academic. So you change after that. You start not, even though dia suka tempat favoritnya itu di gereja, di church. Dia bilang di situ aku merasa tenang karena tempat-tempat di mana Tuhan disebut gitu. And then so when you grow up, you go into I have to pursue this academic path because that's what your parents expect from you. And what happened?
My grandmother was the one that was very strict. She basically told me, she said, if you're not going to go to Harvard, then you need to go to Juilliard, and that's the end of it.
Either Harvard or Juilliard. Oh my God, the standards. Such a pressure.
Well, I was very hard on myself as well. Some of us,
really, that's kind of a surprise.
We are rough on ourselves sometimes, and I think looking back to that also was a lot. But I was doing these things. I ended up in school in Boston, studying music, and I was working, and I was working at a church, and I was training in all of these things, but yet I was kind of doing it a bit halfway, or trying to keep it in a box or something. And
what do you mean halfway?
It's hard to, so Christians would say I was sitting on the fence. This is what we used to say. This usually say, don't sit on the fence. You're either in or you're out.
Yeah.
And I was kind of, my grandmother would call, what are you doing now? Are you studying now? And don't do too much of that God stuff. And
always too much God stuff. Yeah. What did she saw from you? Like you spent a lot of time in the Bible or too much time at a church? That she said that like that. She saw something.
Yeah, I went on a mission trip one summer,
Oh,
and she didn't like that.
Where was it?
I went to Guatemala the first time,
Guatemala.
and then
How old were you?
Philippines after that.
It was. Oh, she was still alive when you were in Guatemala.
Yeah.
Right. That also you need to share your experience in the Philippines. It's interesting. So, and then?
Well, at the end of this, it kind of culminated into this internal crisis, and I ended up so unhappy that
when you get let go of that God stuff, and then
I tried to take my life. I took a bunch of pills in my parents' house of a bunch of things that you should not mix, and I didn't want to die. I just didn't know how to live like that anymore. And I slept for 3 days, and I woke up and I was completely fine.
Was your parent was there?
Nope. They were not home. They actually didn't know for many years. I didn't tell them. But I woke up and I knew several things. I knew that I'd had this voice came in that was like, "Don't ever do that again." But I knew that Allah had like, that was a mercy, and I had been carried through that, and that I wasn't hurt, that I didn't have any bad effects. I also knew that where I was and how bad I felt, because what was happening was I was opening so much inside and I was suppressing it. So it was like I was feeling all this weight of the world, like all the negativity, even because I was resisting. And because I knew I couldn't go that path, I knew there must have been a way for me to hold it. And I also knew that riding the fence, so to speak, led me there. And so I cannot, that the one choice that I know beyond now, I cannot do that again. And I needed, I think, something really kind of big for me, because I was like, I wasn't sure. I didn't want to disappoint this person and disappoint this person.
Who is that person in particular you don't want to disappoint?
I mean, it's so many people. It ends up being a voice in yourself, really. Your inner critic. You say,
that's hard.
All of this.
The voice in you that said,
to shut any voice down but Allah is what needed to happen.
It's not easy.
No. It was scary, but when it happened, the weight that lifted and what opened,
only by the grace of Allah.
It's just
it's in constant struggle.
And the walk after that, I thought, oh, now I'm healed. It's going to be perfect. And it was not.
Let's stop at the heel. We're not there yet. Okay, I need to translate. Okay, just to make sure some will follow. Okay. Jadi perjalanan hidup itu begitu ya. Dari kecil fitrahnya itu mencari Allah. Tahu gitu bahwa harus ada jalan, ada path yang harus, bahkan sebuah sistem, dia bilang kayaknya aku mesti masuk semacam sekolah untuk bisa, kayak jiwa tuh harus tumbuh gitu. Ada tuh perasaan seperti itu. And then tarikan dunia membawa dia menjadi populer di sekolah, tapi dia berasa nggak happy. So, dia bilang aku mau balik lagi. Jadi ketika dia terlalu banyak gaul gitu ya, dia mulai kehilangan waktu-waktu untuk tafakur, kontemplasi, dia jadi nggak happy. Dan itu terjadi lagi ketika dia harus mengejar karir akademik ya, karena kan orang tua neneknya malah bilang kamu kalau nggak ke Harvard harus ke Juilliard gitu katanya, itu 2 sekolah top di Amerika. Samalah kita juga mungkin anak-anak walaupun kita nggak ngomong tapi kayak ada ekspektasi kalau kamu masuk ke ITB mungkin atau apa, wah mama bakal seneng. Memang sih nggak nyuruh, tapi anak jadi kayak, oh itu yang bikin mama happy, misalkan gitu ya. So dia merasakan itu, jadi dia ambil, oke, secara akademik aku akan kejar. Ternyata pada saat yang bersamaan, ya dia tuh senang kan kerjaan. What was it? The missionary trip to Guatemala ya. How old were you?
I was 18.
18 tahun. Jadi di gerejanya tuh kalau misalkan pergi ke daerah miskin, Guatemala, ke Filipina, dia pernah tidur di rumah para pemulung. Pokoknya yang bau deket tempat sampah, ya, orang nggak, itu kerjaannya dia. Terus kata neneknya, udah nggak terlalu banyak God stuff gitu, dia bilang, jangan, nggak usah terlalu banyak ke agama-agama, kamu konsen aja di studi. Dan dia nurut karena dia ingin membuat keluarganya bahagia gitu. Tapi dia bilang itu kalau dia melakukan itu kayak dia harus membayar dengan sesuatu yang dia seperti menutup pintu untuk ya karena Allah Tuhan bagian dari diri kita. Ketika kita seolah harus memilih ini Tuhan ini enggak, ada yang kosong gitu dan itu terjadi bertahun-tahun sampai puncaknya dia nggak mau bunuh diri tapi dia juga nggak tahu harus hidup seperti apa gitu dengan cara ini kayak dia udah sampai bingung dan minum pil sampai obat tidur gitu ya 3 hari pingsan dan baru bangun was it 3 days so like 3 days you're laying there just losing track of time and then you wow 3 days wow.
That's weird. You're a doctor.
It's like coma in a way.
Yeah.
Did you had a dream or
I don't remember any of it. I don't remember any of it.
Thanks God, you're still alive. Oh my God. Yeah, so itu titik balik ketika dia bilang aku nggak bisa hidup seperti ini dengan menegasikan pencarianku sama Allah gitu sama the voices and then you know after that when you try to end your life that I cannot live like this anymore and then what happened
then well I guess and first I want to say that I'm so grateful for my parents. I'm grateful for all the people that pushed against me. All of it is Allah. When the further you go, you look back and you realize how true that is. It needed to happen the way that it did. From That's there nice. I thought because so much had lifted off, I thought, well, I'm healed, therefore everything's going to be easy. It's going to be perfect now. and it was not the case. There was still a lot of walking to do. There was a lot of journeying to do. I spent a lot of time by myself. I spent a lot of time with Allah in prayer. And I spent a lot of time reading the Bible because that was all I knew. A lot of what kind of came off is I threw away a lot of, and I don't know, in Islam, in Christianity, there are a lot of different systems. There are a lot of different people saying a lot of different things. And just like we go back to Quran, I was like, you know what? I just throw all of it away. I'm just going right back to the Bible.
So you read the Bible
like a lot. 8
hours a day.
Like 6-8 hours a day.
That's your healing process. Because you want to go back to just
and things began to happen. I began to have experiences. I would go out and walk, and I was either reading or listening to the Bible, or the passages would start singing in my head. And I had experiences with some of the prophets, and anyway, I ended up. I had a prayer that I wanted to meet those that were in Allah's China cabinet, is what I said. I didn't. It came from my heart. I didn't. Okay. I just had so this sense that people, those that were dear to him, were hidden, and they were not who we thought they were. And because it was a way that, like, I remember when I was little and I used to go and open the China and I would see these things that my mom, they were so precious to her, and they had, some of them were not valuable financially, but they were a special memory. And she put it behind glass. And I was just, we just a lot, and I had a moment and I asked, I want to know. And I dropped it. I didn't even think about it. But that, I think, led me to meeting this mystic Christian group that I walked with for a lot of years. And that, it was amazing. I just wanted to see them. I wanted to honor them. I kind of felt.
What's different, the mystic Christian group? Because you were affiliated.
Yes. I ended up moving on. Not because it was, I mean, it was amazing, and it's brought so much, and I think they still are bringing a lot to the world today. The path that I was looking for and that I had seen since I was a little girl, we didn't have a blueprint. And
what do you mean?
There was it was coming from a teacher. It was kind of who he was getting transmission from Allah to learn, to teach. it was like, just try, just step into heaven, just do all these prayers and try and open your eyes. Um, and we all did. We didn't realize, or I think a lot happened at the time that we were not prepared for, because there's a lot of ego still. There's a lot of maturity and growing up that needs to happen. And alhamdulillah, like the West, a lot of, maybe in just what has happened and how the United States came, we don't have a tradition of elders there. We don't have that generation. And so yeah, the lineage has been missing. And it's in the lineage that talks about this, that knows what happens when you start to, things happen internally, but you don't know how to ground it, or they happen internally, but you have an ego and it moves into a spiritual ego, and then it creates problems in that space.
It's interesting. You can see it. How can a lineage make a difference? I mean, like, what does it do, having a lineage?
I think it's the greatest protection. I also think it's the greatest trampoline that you could have on your path.
Trampoline.
Yes, I think
what you do with trampoline.
I think you will move a lot further and a lot faster, like, if you are part of a lineage.
So it's like a leverage in a way, or a boost, or
you have the backing of hundreds and thousands of people that have walked before you, that have made mistakes. You start, I think, as you tune into the lineage itself, you can feel a little bit like where to go, where not to go. You're not off in no man's land. The other part of this is that the Christian path, I started having some experiences that were a little bit beyond what I would call the Christian path, and I didn't know where they fit. And with the path of Sufism, they talk about all these stations. They talk about all these realities that happen, and these ways that you can get off because you begin to think that you are something that maybe is more of a test.
So you can make sense more of that. I see.
So, but what, they say that you're a Muslim from birth. I've heard. And I've since realized that is true. I look back in my life and see that it's always been there, that the Prophet ﷺ has also always been there. And he was just, the adab is very, very gentle. But I had some experiences in the Christian group where there's a passage where they're first getting into the promised land, right? They believe, and they're going to take what has been given to them. Yes, and they're going to inhabit this land. And the symbolism is amazing. And so there are 12 tribes that come up. And in the middle of the story, there's this kind of funny interlude, and this woman appears, and she's riding on a donkey. And in the Bible, I've come to see that is very significant when that happens. And she asks, she's not supposed to have any inheritance. Her name is not mentioned, but she asks for the upper and the lower springs. For all the water, basically. And it's granted. And then she goes away, and that's it. And for whatever reason, this image would not leave me, and this woman would not leave me. And she followed me around, and I spoke about her and shared her with everyone that I knew, all the Christians that I knew, and nobody knew nobody had any sort of anything about her. Even in the mystic group that I was in, it didn't open anything. Usually things like that do. I ended up going to Jerusalem years later. I met a tour guide, and he looked at me with funny eyes, and he said, "What you were seeing is very important. Keep going with it." Okay. She stayed. And long story short, I realized that she's not a she, that she is a reality. She's Aqsa, and that she's a mosque.
Masjid Al-Aqsa.
Yes. And it became the imam of that mosque is a Sufi sheikh that passed away in 2015 that was calling a lot of people into the lineage in the West. And he began to come to me in dreams.
That was like the first cracking to Islam, actually,
Yeah.
like through Aqsa.
Yeah.
Let's pause there. Where I have a lot to translate. Okay. Okay. So dari tadi episode mau mengakhiri hidupnya, ya. Tapi dia dia kasih pesan bagaimanapun aku bersyukur buat kedua orang tuaku, katanya. Tanpa mereka aku nggak akan menjadi seperti yang sekarang. Apapun itu keadaannya, misalkan harus ya menempuh hal yang berat dalam hidup, misalkan dia harus banyak tekanan gitu kan, karenanya, tapi dia nggak, itu adalah bagian dari hidup saya, gitu katanya. So setelah dia Allah selamatkan dari percobaan untuk mengakhiri hidupnya, kemudian wah udah ini nggak bisa aku hidup seperti ini, dia kemudian belajar Bible gitu ya, belajar tiap hari 8 jam, 6 sampai 8 jam baca Alkitab. Dan sesuatu mulai terjadi gitu, ada kayak suara-suara di dalam, seperti ada yang terbuka di dalam hatinya. Dan dia mulai mencari jawaban-jawaban itu karena banyak hal yang dialami. So dia pindah ke grup Kristen mysticism gitu. Jadi yang mungkin kalau Islam tuh lebih ke sufi gitu ya, karena hal-hal yang banyak terbuka seperti itu biasanya kaum sufi yang paham gitu. Hal-hal yang musyahadah gitu ya, hal-hal seperti itu harus cari ulama tasawuf yang bisa menjelaskan ihwal kebangkitan jiwa gitu. Bukan berarti merendahkan ulama yang lain, tapi tiap ulama punya spesialisasinya. Kalau mau bertanya masalah fikih ya ke ulama fikih, kalau zakat ya khusus dan lain sebagainya. Tapi kalau untuk bertanya ini fenomena apa yang terjadi tentang kebangkitan jiwa, tentang hal yang terjadi di kayak ada alam lain gitu ya, itu carinya ulama tasawuf. Mereka lebih paham tentang itu. Nah, dia mulai gabung ke grup itu. Sampai pada suatu saat dia lihat ada figur perempuan yang ya dia bilang namanya Aqsa gitu. Dan dia cari tahu ini kenapa kok sering lihat, sering mampir di mimpi dan lain sebagainya. Dia tanya ke grup mistisism yang nggak ada yang tahu, kayaknya nggak terbuka gitu buat mereka. Padahal biasanya dijawab tuh hal-hal seperti itu. Akhirnya ketika kunjungan ke Yerusalem, tadinya tour gitu, tapi tour guide-nya tiba-tiba Allah izinkan bicara apa yang kamu cari itu penting, keep going katanya gitu. Dan akhirnya dia tahu di situ baru ngeh bahwa Aqsa itu nama masjid. Jadi oh perempuan itu simbol sesuatu dan dia kemudian mengetahui Imam Masjid Al-Aqsa itu yang baru meninggal tahun 2015 adalah seorang ulama tasawuf dan kemudian dia mulai mempelajari buku-bukunya gitu. So this is your first encounter with Masjid Al-Aqsa in which city? Tell me more about that. What happened?
Well,
once you realize Aqsa is actually a mosque.
So this was a big kind of hint and clue, and yeah. But with all openings, there are things that are given, and then there's also patience, and so I waited,
waited for
to see what is going to happen.
Okay, after you went from Jerusalem and then
came back, praying, doing all of the things. I found a website of his, and was taken to a page where he had recorded a couple of zikrs, and basically all I was told to do initially was to say the name Allah. And
that's your first time saying Allah.
Yeah, it's the first time I ever said Allah. You just say it all day long as much as you can, and then
La ilaha illallah. You said
yes, and then about a month or two later, it was Astaghfirullah that came in.
Astaghfirullah.
and it was like that was all I was doing in the beginning of it.
Wow.
From there, I ended
How
up.
many times did you do it? Just give a rough.
I don't.
Like a lot.
A lot.
The whole
lot.
day. Could be thousands then.
Yeah, maybe.
Wow.
I mean, I think it was part of developing. It's not even a relationship. I would say I had one already.
Yeah.
But it's opening
to the next stage.
Yeah, and cleaning.
How did it feel when you start to chant, say Allah, astaghfirullah, la ilaha?
It's just there's nothing like it. There's something that is so.
I mean, you did all the ritual before, but this is.
Yes, and I did not say that. I had a period in between all of this, where I was actually sent out of the Christian mystic. Isa came to me, and we vowed, and there was a door closed, and then there was something that opened, and what opened before I couldn't see anything, and I had these visions before, so okay, and I went. Part of that was I had a couple experiences in a Buddhist temple, and
you also went to
and then I walked with some yogis for a period, and some shaman and I didn't know why this was happening. I was invited. They would come to me and ask, and I see now, because now there's no question that this is the path, but I also understand the peace that the other ones have, but why this one is the fullness of the revelation that has come to the earth. And so I'm grateful for that. Alhamdulillah. Yeah. It was not an easy time. It's all
a piece of puzzle. You need to experience all of that.
Yeah. Sometimes when you're in a place where you don't really understand what's happening and you're not arriving. Yeah. I knew none of those were the path. But I knew I was told to go there for a period.
What kind of feeling that like this is not like what's missing?
It was just an inner knowing, but it was like, no, you need to come here. I knew I needed to serve. I knew I needed somehow to be aware of some of the inner planes of those paths.
I guess when you knew it, like, yeah, this is it.
Yeah, I went later on a family trip to Istanbul, and I wanted to see some dervishes. That was my only ask. I wanted to go to a mosque and I wanted to see dervishes, but I didn't want to see like a show.
No,
I wanted to experience
real life.
Yeah, people that were really on the path, and in
the Zawiya.
Well, I didn't know this, so I just looked to see if it. And they called it a monastery, and it was the one place they would let.
Like you can stay over there, or just visiting.
You could just visit, but they would let you into their Thursday night service, like there for their for their like targa. And I went, and I'd been asked to read a book months earlier by this Indian, and in it I didn't realize he quoted Rumi. I didn't know it was Rumi, but this whole thing about I was born a rock and I died a rock, and then I was born a plant, and I read the whole book and I thought, I don't understand that at all. Okay, put it on the shelf. That night, they zikred to this. And as it was happening, everything in me was cracking open. I've never experienced something like that. There was so much in the room. I cried, I think, for probably 12 hours. That was the night that Islam officially opened. So Siddhi had come. I'd been saying all of those months of that was just preparation. Yeah. That night it opened.
Wow.
And I came back. Wow. Yeah. What just happened?
But how long did you stay there?
In the monastery that my family had to like half carry me home.
Because you're like still.
I wasn't. Yes, I was kind of not in a.
Wow.
Yeah, but I had 3 kids, and they were with me. My son sat on my lap, like laid on my lap the whole time, and they were okay. They were not scared, but they could tell that something huge had happened, and I'm grateful that they were there for that. I think
can feel it.
I think kids, they need to be in that place.
In a way, they witness. This is the opening.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
beautiful. It's
Mhm.
beautiful being around your kids.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then what happened?
Then Ibn Arabi opened.
How?
Um, that also was a thing. I think I probably landed on it online or something. I don't remember.
Handy, this
Uh,
online stuff. You find the website,
Allah
you start with
uses
it. Exactly.
everything.
Yeah.
He
Mm.
will.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and
So
I had inner experiences with some of these prophets. And I, as a young girl, something about Noah, I was asked to teach the story of Noah to some preschool kids. I was very young myself, and I, as I do, was very studious and diligent in my preparation.
Right.
And as I was preparing, something happened to me, and I didn't, I had no idea what it was, but I knew that the story of Noah was hugely significant in a way that we
You
didn't
just
talk
knew.
about in the past.
But you know this. You knew the story a
And I
long
kept
time ago.
asking everybody, and nobody could tell me. Oh, it's just a story about animals. No, it's not. I said, no, it's not. Nobody could tell me. Even in the other group, there was a knowing that it was more than what we thought, but there was no understanding yet. Ibn Arabi started to speak about that was where I first got beginning to get taste of, oh, this man has walked
you know
with
something. Yeah.
So I started I connected with Eric Schwebwinkel, and then you and I met in Zurich. Months later, that was very, very, all of it says a lot.
Yeah, oh, that does. Well, when was it, Turkey?
Turkey was
This
Thanksgiving.
opening, yeah. Which
Before
month? Which year?
Thanksgiving, November before.
2022.
Yeah. So,
2022.
and then the next June, I went to Zurich.
Yeah.
And Zurich was, it was about what I started to feel, and is that there is a way of living, a way of being, a way of carrying yourself in this lineage that is very important, and it cannot be just read about. You have to breathe it in and live it.
Yeah.
And this was a week of living and breathing and talking Ibn Arabi and walking through, and it's happening again this summer.
Any of you? Okay, let me see. Let's translate first. Let's stop at Ibn Arabi first. So, wow. What was it? Turkey ya. The opening. Jadi setelah Aqsa. Di situ dia kemudian, jadi ketika dia mencari Tuhan, mencari Allah, itu dia nggak mikir Islam sebagai satu solusi, karena di Barat image tentang agama ini adalah ya masih kurang inilah populer, dianggapnya kekerasan dan lain sebagainya. Jadi dia nggak mikir sama sekali ke sana. Tapi ketika mimpi terus tentang Aqsa, dalam mimpinya imajinasinya adalah seorang perempuan, padahal tuh baru ngeh, oh Aqsa itu nama masjid. Baru ngeh lagi imam di situ ternyata punya website, dan dia udah mulai buka websitenya. Di situ diajarin beberapa zikir. Mulai tuh dia zikir Allah, Allah, Allah. Terus ada astagfirullah gitu kan ya. Setelah itu la ilaha illallah. Nah, sebulan dia merasakan sesuatu gitu. Ada sesuatu yang terjadi di situ, dan kemudian cara Allah membawa lebih lanjut adalah ketika dia dan keluarganya berkunjung ke Turki. Nah, kenapa? Pokoknya dia pengen hadir di sebuah tempat ya, di mana ada komunitas sufi di situ, tapi bukan nonton semacam pentas atau apa, tapi dia ingin merasakan gimana para sufi itu menjalani ritual keseharian. Nah, mereka itu membiarkan tiap Kamis malam Jumat, biasanya kita yasinan atau apa ya, mereka zikir, dia boleh ikut bawa anaknya 3 di situ, dan dia hadir di situ, sesuatu terjadi. Pokoknya sangat menyentuh, sampai 12 jam nangis terus, sampai keluarga itu harus boyong dia pulang gitu, kayak yang udah kayak ini dia gitu. Jadi itulah waktu atau saat dia terbuka terhadap Islam. Oh, ini jalannya gitu. Kemudian ya banyak hal terjadi ya, begitu banyak zikir-zikir, walaupun dia nggak ngerti atau belum mulai sholat atau apa, tapi udah mulai zikir. Misalkan ada banyak pertanyaan tentang Nuh Itu apa artinya? Apa arti 8 ternak yang berpasangan? Dia nanya ke grup-grupnya, nggak ada yang bisa jawab. Atau jawabannya menurut dia tidak memuaskan. Sampai dia menemukan seorang ulama sufi bernama Ibnu Arabi. Bukunya di situ, wah dia kayaknya tahu sesuatu nih gitu. Jadi banyak penjelasan dari Ibnu Arabi, and which is orang Barat tuh banyak seneng belajar Ibnu Arabi karena penjelasannya make sense gitu. Nah, buat nih teman-teman mungkin yang di Eropa atau suaminya masih daerah sana, we have retreat Ibnu Arabi coming up di bulan Juni, masih ada tempat tersedia ya. Jadi kita ke Swiss, ke Zurich, wah deket pegunungan, seminggu belajar Ibnu Arabi langsung diajarin oleh sang penerjemah Ibnu Arabi namanya Eric Winkel. Jadi dia nerjemahin dari bahasa Arab ke Inggris gitu. Kalau ada yang berminat, silakan hubungi saya ya. Di situ kemudian, so that's the beginning of like you want to go to Ibn Arabi and you went to the retreat.
Yeah,
And then what happened at the retreat?
It's kind of the story of Allah building the house within me,
Yeah,
really.
yeah, absolutely.
I thought
Since 4 years old, even way before that.
Yeah. I thought I was going to this retreat, and I did, to feel what it is like to be a Sufi, to be a Muslim, to be, what is this thing called a dog? What does it look like? What does it feel like? And I did very much. I experienced that all week. I would also say the other big thing that came out of that week, and it wasn't present until a couple of weeks later, was about Salat, and that would be the next piece that Allah would ask me to build.
You were afraid at the beginning. I hesitate, like we were doing Salat.
There was a room downstairs, and we were in
just
bunk
like
rooms. They would ask me every time. And
I never saw you there.
I wouldn't even go down there. I didn't even want to look. No.
What was it?
I thought if I looked, it was like they would catch me and I would not be able to get up or something.
I'm not ready.
I was scared. I was so scared. And I had a few days after and spent some time with this older woman, and she even said, I can teach you and you can just say subhanallah for everything. And I said, no, I wouldn't do it. I have more understanding and more compassion about that now. I didn't know that there's a lot of us, there can be a big block to the prostration to Allah, and he's so gentle and so kind to us. And so I went back home and praying all the time. And
like praying, you mean like zikr?
Yes, because you didn't do. Yes, and also, I mean, I've always spoken to Allah. Sometimes I will do these, and then I will end up in a state or something. I was waking up at night to be with him, and I read something one day that said that the earth herself, she's a living being, and she exists and allows all of humanity to walk on top of her. She is below all of us. And the least you can do to honor her, to honor the gift that this earth gives you so that you have a life, that we get to live out this experience here, is to bow, to prostrate to her, to meet her at her level. And something was in me was very touched by that, and I thought, I can do that.
Where did you read that?
It's in Ibn Arabi, actually. And I thought, okay, so what I did, and I would get up and I would pray, not salah, but just pray, and then I would go outside at the end. And initially, it was whichever way, but I did it once, and it was like, no, you need to know where the Kaaba is. I didn't even know. So I would turn around and go this way.
But how do you find out which way is Kaaba?
I feel it.
I know.
But I think I looked.
Like,
I think I looked. And I didn't even understand what any of that was. And so I went and I just bowed on the grass. And I think by the end I was like coming out to feed the ants. I'm so sorry, and all of the things around. But however, 7-10 days into it, by then I was begging Allah to learn Salat. I didn't know that
You got
something
something
happened
happened.
for me. I don't know if I was scared to prostrate. I don't know if I just needed to experience what would happen, because what happens is so much in me opened.
So this probably in July, coming
in
summer. And then what happened?
It was in July. Then a couple of months later, let's see, maybe August, September, I had word that that I was to go somewhere, and it came through someone who normally never says that. So I knew, I kind of marked it. It's happened one other time in my life from them, and so I was waiting, and what immediately came, Rumi's 75th anniversary, 750th. I don't remember. There's a big party in Konya, and there was a group going, and there was a space opened up at the very last minute. I thought, this must be Allah. Must be, right? I called my mother to see if I could get childcare, and every door slammed in my face. And for what I thought was silly reasons, and I went in, and Allah said surrender, and I just let it go, and something in me knew that wasn't it. That was kind of the test, the distraction. Wow. And so I gave it back. Oh. And then out of the blue, you texted me and asked me if I wanted to go to Indonesia and meet Murshid. And
because you asked me in Zurich, it's a follow-up question.
Yeah, and he also, I remember the first time you said his name, how it was almost like tears came up in me. Yeah, just the honor and the respect that I hold for these ones, let alone, one that now I feel like I knew before.
And so when I text Murshid, sometimes waiting for you.
I was very scared.
It cancels a lot of things.
Didn't know what.
You just connect to each other. It's like I witnessed that. Kind of envy in a way. That's great. Yeah.
It's not because we're anybody. It's because Allah is so
great. The yearning. I mean, he'd come to just come. I feel. I mean, that's something. Inshallah.
Yeah. So I took Shahada.
Yeah. So jadi ceritanya, okay. Pencarian dia akhirnya Allah bawa ke Islam. Dari baca Ibn Arabi, dia banyak paham aspek dimensi lain dari Islam gitu. Jadi banyak hal seperti hal-hal yang dia pertanyakan, kenapa Nuh dengan 8 ternak berpasangan, itu Ibn Arabi di Futuhatnya banyak bicara tentang hal yang mungkin ulama lain ya biasanya ulama tasawuf yang punya kapasitas untuk menjelaskan aspek lain, ya aspek dalam dari agama. Sekali lagi bukan berarti aspek cangkang itu nggak penting, justru penting banget. Jadi syariat, jadi itu kan syariat, tarekat, hakikat, makrifat itu udah menjadi sebuah kesatuan yang nggak bisa dipisahkan gitu. Nah, ketika dia tahu ada retreat Ibn Arabi nih tahun lalu, that was the first retreat ever Ibn Arabi. So I was like, kita datang, karena aku kenal Eric Winkle juga. Aku datang 2 hari terakhir. Nah, Eric tuh pernah ke Indonesia. Jadi dia sangat terkesan dengan sebuah tarekat gitu deh. Ketemu dengan seorang mursyid. Dia sebut nama mursyid itu ya. Saya sebut ya Mursyid Zamzam katanya. Di event itu, di salah satu pertemuan. Nah, dari sekitar how many participants were there? 18? 15, something like that.
And they were from all over.
Dari Kanada,
different lineages.
Ya, dari semua. Ada dari Singapura, dari tarekat lain. Jadi kita tinggal di Zurich itu ada semacam rumah 3 lantai. Terus kita share room, ya. Kita ada bunk bed gitu. Terus WC-nya bersih. Terus sekeliling, wah, you hear that the sounds of the bell of the cows that constantly, and it's like beautiful. It's just like
it's nice absolutely place. Wonderful. And what Eric Winkle is carrying from Ibn Arabi himself is very significant
Ya,
for the
ya,
earth and for this
betul.
time.
Dia Eric Winkle tuh punya jasa untuk memperkenalkan aspek lain dari Islam melalui Ibnu Arabi, dan itu hal lain tuh. Mungkin maybe someday we should invite you to just talk, also to share untuk publiknya, insyaAllah. When we are in Indonesia, maybe I will ask him. Ya, jadi dari retreat itu, karena Eric nyebutin nama seorang mursyid, dia bertanya, dari sekian belas orang ya, cuma 2 orang yang nanya, karena Eric suruh aku ngomong gitu tentang siapa itu Mursyid Zamzam. Terus 2 orang datang, siapa sih Mursyid Zamzam? That was the first time was you ask, you and Mubarak, the ones in Singapore. And then after that, so knowing that I'm planning to go to Indonesia, and you was asking, hey, so out of the blue I text you, it's like, I'm going to Indonesia, you want to come? It's like invitation to see Mursyid Zamzam. And then pada saat itu sebenarnya dia udah pengen pergi ke Turki lagi, kan Turki tempat yang sangat spesial tadi kan, dia punya pengalaman. Ada Urs ya, Van Rumi, jadi peringatan hari kematian Rumi. Jadi buat para sufi kan, kematian itu seperti hari pernikahan, bukan sesuatu yang harus ditangisi terus, tapi itu adalah sebuah pertemuan seorang pecinta dengan sang cinta, ya, the meeting of the beloved. That's why they celebrate the death of Rumi. Dia di situ pede banget pada awalnya, wah ini mungkin dari Allah nih, ada opening, ada kesempatan pergi lagi ke sana. Tapi entah kenapa buminya tuh nggak terbuka gitu. Kan dia punya 3 anak, dia coba minta tolong ibunya, bisa nggak jagain anaknya, nggak bisa tiba-tiba. Dan alasannya tuh aneh banget gitu. Terus dia bilang, oh ini kayaknya bukan ini. So ya akhirnya dia tahu itu semacam distraction. Dan by the time, of course, you're a bit disappointed when you find out you cannot go to Turkey for Urs.
It's the way that Allah works. It's happened to me before. I knew that, when I closed, and then feeling what I felt, I knew, that was the decoy. You see, Allah always says that.
He did like a test you. And then what happened?
And then I waited, and then yours opened, and because I was already, I think it scared you a little bit, I don't know, but I was already waiting, and so it was already a yes, and of course then finding a flight and all of that, when Allah tells you to go and makes it's very, very easy, and you kind of don't have a choice. But I got there, and I knew that I was supposed to take Shahada as well. I didn't know how that would happen, or in what way, but I made a request. It turned out to be very significant. I think as this year has gone through, both Eric and I have become very passionate about the importance of the Sharia and of Quran and walking for this, even for the Sufi path. It's very important.
Absolutely.
And I it's something that has been waiting to come in.
Yeah. So that's it for now. We get like you akhirnya mengucapkan syahadat di Indonesia. Jadi perjalanan ke Turki nggak jadi, dan tiba-tiba aku nge-text dia, aku mau ke Indonesia, mau ikut nggak? Gitu. Terus tiba-tiba dia bilang kalau ya adabnya dia tuh selalu tanya sama Allah, itu penting ya. Terus kemudian dia bilang kalau Allah mengizinkan tuh gampang aja beli tiket terbuka dan lain sebagainya. And then so I remember the day you came to, it was 27th October, something like that. Yeah, I remember that day in Jakarta. Ya dia datang terus dia bilang dia udah punya request, aku pengen bersyahadat ada saksi, and that was also my first experience like guiding someone bersyahadat.
Yeah, and I didn't understand that then. I didn't know the issues of men and women and all of the adab there. I just went with it, and I was feeling and experiencing a lot, and to feel the transmission flow from him and then into you, and then I was like, this is amazing.
Last question before we take questions. How did you feel in that shahada?
I think it changed everything. I mean, because I've told elsewhere, I had taken a shahada over the phone. The first time that Allah even said something to me, I said, well, I pray that every day. Why in the world do I need to? there is something that shifts when there's witnesses, um, and when it's done in such a way. And I think my soul's been waiting and has been looking, and yeah, there's been a lot of work I've been doing this year, getting ready to go back to Indonesia as well.
Inshallah.
Yeah.
Inshallah. So that's the
So it's
beginning
very
of it.
important.
Ya, jadi dia sebelum ke Indonesia itu udah syahadat lewat telepon. Tapi dia bilang kurang afdol. Dan di situ ada saksi, terus physical itu dia bilang beda banget itu pengalamannya. Jadi semua aspek syariah dia bilang itu penting, sesuatu hal yang kadang ya ada sufi-sufi tertentu, oh syariah nggak penting, sholat yang penting hati aja, nggak begitu gitu. Dia seorang mualaf, dia sudah mengerti hal-hal seperti ini. So that's like 1 hour almost. Ya, itu cerita tentang seorang Ashley dari kecil, pencarian dia sampai akhirnya mengucapkan syahadat di Indonesia. Dan insya Allah, Julie, you come back to Indonesia, maybe we can meet some of them in Jakarta, Bandung, kita bisa kopi darat ya, insya Allah. Ya, dari Surabaya silahkan datang, because we're not going to go to Surabaya this time. Maybe next year, insya Allah. Gitu ya, Mbak Dini. Yuk kita buka sesi diskusi, boleh yang bisa open mic dan video bisa bicara langsung sama Ashley, atau ya bisa bahasa Indonesia, nanti saya translate, saya terjemahkan. Silahkan. Ada yang mau bicara? Atau bisa kirim lewat chat. Ya, langsung di unmute aja Mbak, Ibu. Silakan. So, kita punya 35 ya, 35 peserta. Ayo gantian. Jangan aku aja. Silakan, langsung di unmute. Monggo Mbak Adis, ini kok pada diam semua nih? Masih merenung. Hah? Yes, please.
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ada videonya nggak? Dia masih ingat loh.
Aduh, aku mohon maaf, aku nggak
apa-apa,
open
nggak apa-apa.
video.
You don't have to.
Iya.
You don't have to.
I'm
Okay.
sorry, Ashley, off
No
cam.
worries.
Iya, oke.
Yeah.
Very interesting gitu, very interesting. Dan yang paling Teh Tessa, tolong nanti di translate ya sama Ashley.
Yeah. Boleh.
Pertanyaannya adalah, mungkin bukan pertanyaan, tapi pernyataan yang aku sangat terkesan adalah segala sesuatu Ashley selalu berkomunikasi dengan Allah. Artinya sebelum dia bersyahadat maupun setelah dia bersyahadat, komunikasinya atau intensitas konektivitasnya dengan Allah itu sungguh kuat, dan ternyata itu membimbingnya ke jalan yang lurus gitu ya, ihdinas sirotol mustaqim begitu. Nah, hal itu sebenarnya yang mungkin seringkali saya itu lalai gitu terhadap hal itu. Mungkin karena kita merasa dari kecil, saya sudah merasa Islam itu sudah pasti seperti otomatis begitu terkait dengan Tuhan gitu. Tapi ternyata adab itu yang seringkali lupa begitu. Iya.
Betul. Ya.
Mungkin sesederhana ya seperti Teh Tessa ceritakan, bahwa untuk menaruh garam pun gitu di masakan tuh kita harus minta izin gitu, ya Allah, ya Allah.
Just like you, pilih baju yang mana ya Allah hari ini.
Iya, betul. Pilih baju,
Iya.
tapi kadang Pak, apa ya Allah gitu. Kita itu benar-benar sebagai manusia itu memang clueless gitu sebenarnya. Tapi begitu dia hadir kayak pas aja gitu. Milih itu kalau yang ini pasangannya sama yang ini langsung gitu, nggak pakai bingung-bingung, dan bener gitu pada saat hadir di acara tuh oke gitu hasilnya, Masya Allah gitu.
Lahir batin ya, kan ada pengalaman internal itu
mungkin itu ya, itu yang menurut saya
you give meaning. Kita nggak pakai baju untuk please other people atau apa, tapi
itu
ada
mungkin
Allahnya.
ya Teteh, ya Allah, dengan kita nanya aja itu kan seperti mengakui keberadaan dia gitu ya di setiap sisi kehidupan kita gitu. Nah, itu yang saya pengen tanya sama Ashley, bagaimana ya itu agar
Hmm,
agar hidup terus gitu, agar nanya terus, bahkan tadi nanya tiket gitu kan.
Ya,
Ya
ya,
ke
ya, ya, ya,
Indonesia itu saya
ya.
terkesan banget gitu. Dia
Yes.
selalu nanya sama Allah, kalau kalau Allah iya berarti pasti gampang gitu kan, pesen
Ya, ya,
tiket
ya.
gitu.
Betul.
eh Hal itu sih sebenarnya yang, karena hal itu
Oh,
kadang-kadang tuh yang bahkan pada ibadah kita terus akhirnya mengandalkan pada ibadah kita, pada tahajud kita gitu, bukan
yes. Ya.
bukan pada Allahnya gitu, pada puasa
Hmm,
kita
sangat.
gitu. Padahal ini kan hanya
Betul.
medium
Ya.
gitu untuk sampai pada dia gitu.
Beautiful. Iya kan?
Iya,
So, aku
iya,
tanya ya.
iya, iya. Oke,
So,
thank you.
she's really impressed. I made a remarks actually. This is something that I observed about you. And like everything you want to do, you ask Allah. It's like I ask Allah. I ask Allah. Did you do it like a long time ago? Where did you start? Like talking to him, and it's like always like consulting, always like involving Allah in every single decision you make.
That's a hard thing to answer because there are some things that are in me that and it's actually not been until I found Islam that I've really understood that these are ways.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've something in me always knew that that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
You don't have permission unless he gives you permission,
Yeah.
and so you have to wait.
You knew it, but then you
but
start
that's
to...
not the way that we're taught in the West,
No.
so it's a bit strange.
What do you mean it's not a way to... In Christianity, you also like asking for
It's
God.
not.
Yeah,
but it's just different. It's not.
It's different.
This whole thing about being invited,
right? The adab is like,
that's from Allah.
Ya, ya, jadi gitu. Dia juga merasa sebelumnya walaupun dia Kristen ya, banyak hal-hal seperti dia beda. Jadi Islam tuh adabnya tinggi banget ya. Kesadaran bahwa kalau Allah nggak mengizinkan nggak akan terjadi gitu. Jadi dia tahu itu. Bahkan ketika dia pengen banget ke Turki, tapi kok buminya ditutup. Nah ini ya, kita udah belajar nih di kajian suluk bahwa kalau mau membedakan sesuatu itu hawa nafsu atau enggak, kalau kita suluk tuh nggak boleh ngoyo. Ukur dengan 2K, kemampuan dan kesempatan. Oke, mampu, aku punya uangnya beli tiket gitu ya ke Turki, tapi nggak ada kesempatannya. Atau gini, kebalik, kesempatan ada, kita bisa pergi, kemampuan itu tergantung banyak hal ya. Beli tiket mampu, tapi nggak mampu ninggalin anak. Nah, itu juga bukan kemampuan. Kita nggak bisa ngoyo dan jadi marah ke pasangan. Kenapa nggak bisa? Anak sakit misalkan, berarti kita lagi nggak dimampukan. Nggak bisa ngoyo. Di situ dia harus ngedrop. Di situ kemudian dia lihat, oh ini mah bukan katanya. Sampai dia bilang ini decoy. Ini mah cuman iming-iming. Nah, dia gerak hati itu sahabat-sahabat yang penting ya. Ketika kita berserah diri, agama ini dikatakan Islam. Kita berserah diri dengan aliran kehidupan. Kita nggak bisa ngoyo, pengennya pergi ke sini, tapi kata Allah gagal ya. Jadi ada aja caranya gitu ya. Mau corona kayak, mau pesawatnya delay, mau apa, nggak jadi gitu. Nah, ketika itu kita harus balik lagi sama Allah. Dia bilang dia banyak 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 berdialog sama Allah tuh ketika Islam aja gitu, ketika mulai mengenal Islam dan punya, you feel something deep when you start to like asking like it means a lot.
And also remember when I was little, I used to read and still do the prophets, and you read their lives and you read and I was always searching for his heart. And noticing all the little details about how they walked and how messages came and when they knew to go and when they knew to stop.
Right. Well, oh, she said, oh,
really, I think we're remembering our family.
Right.
So it's not about trying to be a certain way.
Okay, my aunt, she chatted. Last time she met you at the airport, and then she said, "You, how do you learn how to put it? You look so good looking." It's always about this. This is my fashion designer. Tell
I
me,
need to
yeah.
come and learn from you. No, I was so hopeless. At the beginning, we had some jokes that we could have had a comedy show about me trying to be a Muslim. Trying
With
to do,
many, yeah,
yes,
yes.
yes,
You should document it. Like this is the first attempt, second attempt.
and salat
pictures.
with the and
Yeah.
getting it all tangled and
I remember.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I had someone tell me you should go to YouTube, and I finally was like, Allah, will you just show me something?
So dia selalu bilang ya Allah gitu.
Allah just showed me today, and that was it. And so thank you. I don't know, I'm doing my best.
Ya. Dia sejak syahadat tuh dia pakai jilbabnya kenceng banget gitu ya. Terus dia, I remember we will pray together. I'm sorry. It falls off.
Yeah.
You didn't do anything about it.
I couldn't see.
And he kept distracting me. What are you doing?
She's trying to show me how to pray.
Yeah.
And she puts on, what is it
That's
called?
mukena.
Yeah, she put it on me. And then, and we bow. And it falls off. And I didn't want to tell her because we're in front of Allah.
Do something about it. I mean, yeah, okay. That was funny. Anyway, wah, alhamdulillah perjuangannya mencari model yang pas gitu sampai tapi dia bilang ya Allah tolong ajari. Jadi adabnya gitu ya sangat Allah dipanggil-panggil gitu. And Madinah, as we learn in kajian suluk, is part of what we constantly reminding myself as well. Ask Allah in anything. He did like she has experience like now if I want to go to work, then like she has like probably your wardrobe is like as big as my house. I can imagine because you have all these nice clothes. And it says like, which one should I wear today, Allah? And it's just like she felt something different.
It's
like,
amazing to do this. And even if you don't feel like you hear a reply,
yeah, you
keep asking.
Absolutely.
Because what will happen is it delights Allah so much that He will begin to answer. So even you go to the grocery store, which apple do I want?
Exactly. Which cucumber should I pick? This orange or that? This red? So that becomes zikr. And that's you turn anything into gold. That's the Midas story. You touch everything. So everything you do, like you do it for Allah, and suddenly it has so much meaning. And the other person can feel that. Even the oranges can feel it. This is a living being. They start to do something to you. Anyway, Mbak Teh Yanti tadi udah angkat tangan, silakan. Siapa tadi? Mbak Yanti? Ya? Bisa di-unmute?
Ya.
Ya.
Assalamualaikum.
Ya, waalaikumsalam.
Ashley.
Hai, apa kabar?
Baik, waktu itu kita ketemu di Paris ya.
Di Paris.
Iya. Sama Teh Yen ada juga di sini di Zoom. Gitu.
How are you?
Ya baik. Baik. Habis lebaran ramai ini sibuk. Iya, pertanyaan sih bukan pertanyaan tapi kesan ya seperti yang tadi disampaikan, kurang lebih sama seperti yang disampaikan oleh Ibu Dina tadi. Iya, bahwa yang aku tahu yang mualaf, ada temanku yang mualaf karena ikut suaminya yang Islam. Lalu kita tahu mualaf ya hanya dari media massa saja, artis-artis Indonesia dan sebagainya, yang kesanku hanya dilihat dari luarnya saja. Oh, mualaf, dia sudah sholat atau belum? Sholatnya reguler apa enggak? Dia puasa apa enggak? Dia pakai jilbab atau enggak? Atau kalau laki-laki, dia sholat Jumat enggak? Tiap hari Jumat ke masjid apa enggak? Jadi apa yang terlihat dari luar? Sedangkan yang aku tangkap dari perjalanan spiritual Ashley menjadi mualaf itu lebih ke spiritual dari hatinya. Padahal itu barangkali itu yang paling penting. Dan itu sangat berkesan sekali bagi aku yang sejak lahir Islam. Jadi aku pun nggak pernah merasakan kayak gini, nggak sampai seintensif seperti yang dirasakan oleh Ashley. Jadi itu sangat berkesan sekali perjalanan spiritualnya Ashley. Mungkin tanggapan dari Teh Tessa dan Ashley. Sebenarnya yang penting tuh gimana? Yang ritualnya itu yang kelihatan sama orang, ataukah dari hati
Keduanya.
yang tidak
Ya.
terlihat sama
So,
orang lain?
betul.
Gitu.
Terima kasih Mbak Yanti. Ini
Terima
penting
kasih.
pertanyaannya. Mungkin karena kita platformnya kajian suluk ya. Kajian suluk tuh kita lebih membahas aspek inner dimension. Jadi kalau Mbak Yanti lihat YouTube-nya semua kita membahas tentang haji atau apa. Kalau masalah fikih, kalau syariah itu ulama fikih paling jago dan saya bukan ulama fikih, jadi saya nggak ke arah sana. Tapi lebih ke tasawuf gitu. Jadi inner dimension, apa meaning, apa makna sebuah gerakan tawaf, kenapa mesti 7 kali misalkan, apa makna sa'i gitu ya, apa makna Ka'bah, kenapa ada 4 pilar, itu di tasawuf dibahas gitu. Kenapa panggilan azan hayya 'alas shalah, hayya 'alal falah, apa maksudnya al falah gitu kan. Jadi kita punya, kemarin aku ketemu orang yang mau belajar Islam tuh, Maryam ya, orang Polish ya, Polandia, Prancis. Sebenarnya bilang aku pengen belajar Islam, pengen baca Quran, pengen belajar tapi pengen inner meaning. Dia bilang oke deh kita buka. Jadi aku punya request nih buat teman-teman yang nanti mau ikutan juga. Kita mau buka kelas baru tapi ini khusus untuk dalam bahasa Inggris buat mungkin suaminya atau temennya. Jadi saya buka buat dia sama beberapa orang mualaf yang ingin belajar Al-Quran. Kita mulai dari Al-Fatihah, Al-Baqarah, ayat demi ayat, tapi dalam bahasa Inggris gitu. Karena ada demand-nya, that's how we start gitu. So, she said, I'm impressed, but usually if we talk about mualaf, yeah, it's the one who just revert to Islam, the emphasis is like, did you do salah? Did you do fasting? Or did you, if it's women, then did you do hijab right away? Just Sharia aspect. But she said, I'm impressed. Our talk today to talk about your journey, like inner journey, and that she felt something there. And she said that I was Muslim, born in a Muslim family. I missed that. Yeah. Because we just like you do salah, but then yeah.
It's interesting. We think that young people today do not care about religion, do not care about spirituality. And I think what is happening is there's an insistence now that people want to know what is the inner meaning, why am I doing what I'm doing, and it's not because they're defiant.
No.
I think there's something in the soul that wants to, and so talking
answer
about the inner meaning of salat, and what are people want to know why we're here, and they're tired of doing things that don't have meaning, and so it's actually a deeper hunger, that it just looks like they're running
you need
away.
That you need sense of meaning.
So I have a lot of hope for humanity.
So her question also would be like, how important it is to know the Sharia aspect and also the inner aspect. How can we?
For me, the deen has become so important. It's been my great revelation lately that is, you go further on the path, that it is the thing that will hold you, it will keep you, and it will help you journey a lot faster. It's not meaningless. It is there. It is a great mercy, a great gift from Allah. It's something that I've seen it, and I had no idea when I was younger. I also did all of these rituals and things in the Christian churches, and I just did them as a shell. I thought they were silly, and
in the beginning,
and I didn't know, and I realized that I think some of them have been seeded purposely to wait for some who would dare to ask.
Like hidden things.
It's like a jewel, yes.
Right.
And
only for those who really seek.
I guarantee you, if you find a murshid, you will find one who is practicing the Sharia. And and even if they're not saying they're doing it outwardly, because there are some that are out, and I guarantee you in private they are, because that's how they hold what they're holding.
That's right. Jadi penting Mbak Yanti aspek syariah dan inner gitu ya. Kayak gini lah, kita ke pasar buah gitu ya. mau nggak beli jeruk yang udah kebuka, nggak ada cangkangnya. Resikonya kan kotor ya. Cangkang tuh penting buat melindungi. Memang kita nggak makan cangkangnya. Kita yang penting isinya kan ya iya, tapi it's to protect. I just give the analogy. It's like you would you like to buy orange without the peel? I mean like they already it's the protect. We don't eat them. Yeah, but see the syariah is there untuk melindungi. Dan by the way dari kata syariah itu sebenarnya artinya a path to water. Jadi itu jalan menuju air. Air itu adalah ilmu. Jadi syariah itu jalannya yang harus diikuti. Jadi kita nggak bisa bersuluk, bertasawuf tanpa membangun aspek syariah. Nggak akan landed. Itu groundnya. Jadi sholat mesti, saum, itu pilar Islam harus tegak. Kalau nggak iman tidak akan terbentuk. Kalau iman nggak ada, boro-boro ihsan. Itu adalah 3 pilar ad-din. Islam, iman, ihsan. Ihsan adalah sebuah kesadaran bahwa kita selalu dilihat Allah. Sebenarnya kita harusnya bisa merasakan Allah. Nah, kalau merasa dilihat Allah itu jadinya banyak dialog. Tadi Mbak Dina bilang, ya semuanya pengen diajarin pakai jilbab aja ngomong sama Allah. Iya, itu adabnya. Nggak langsung buru-buru scrolling YouTube. Bismillah buka telepon tuh mestinya Bismillah. Siapa tahu supaya dilindungi Allah, ya kan? Jalan ke rumah. Rasulullah ngajarin pakai sepatu ada doanya, masuk WC ada doa, itu adab. Gitu. Coba apply itu, nanti kita akan merasakan seperti dia rasakan ada sesuatu yang berubah dalam hidup, berkahnya itu gitu. Gitu Mbak. Jadi dua-duanya penting, important equally.
Ya, terima kasih.
Baca Quran dan Sunnah. Ya, absolutely. Gitu Mbak Yanti.
Terima kasih.
Alhamdulillah. So we have 2 questions dari chat ini. It has something to do with family. So when you start to wear hijab, how about the family? How did your husband and then you do all the fasting? How did your family respond to it? And that's the first question. And then the second, how did you explain at the beginning to your family about the whole of your spiritual roller coaster? Have they ever thought that if sort of mystical or even you being intoxicated by sort of spirit probably like how did you communicate it to them?
Yeah, you've had, I think the Prophet himself also went through something and not that I would ever compare myself to him in that sort of way. Family is tricky, and yet Allah assigns us to family for a reason. The hijab, yes, they pushed against me very much. But I will say, Murshid Zamzam specifically told me that I did not need to. And then I got called, why are you wearing hijab? It was inner guidance. I was told that it was my choice. He had said it was my choice. And I asked Allah, and it was really at the time I was fighting it. And so the issue was not even the family, it was me. It was me that was like, I like my hair and I don't want to wear this. And then it was, I want to know what it's doing and what does it feel like when I put it on, and what happens, and how does it help me, and how does it help me hold what I'm learning, and the light that's growing inside of me. Very much it does. And so I saw those benefits. But yeah, I had to be worked on with me first, and then when I got home, that was a whole other thing. I have since learned, my kids, I have 3 kids, and they're preteen teenagers, and part of they're learning how to be in the world, and they're going to push up against parents. Anything you say, you tell them put down your PlayStation, they're going to also push against it. So mom wearing a funny hat or whatever they call it, I called it a veil at home. Michael, my son, had a lot to say initially. And then when we talked about it several times, and he also saw that it didn't change who I was, that I was fully present with them, that I wasn't off flying around in Wonderland, that, you know, I'm still mom. And in fact, there were beautiful reasons that I was doing it. And it had to do with principles. And yeah, so there was that.
And now it changed after like 5 months.
Yeah, I have to say, I wish I had known about this. This isn't the joke I tell for people that are just not open at all to Islam. Back home is that had I had this at the dinner table as a teenager, because I'm feeling everybody else's stuff. I didn't know this protects you from feeling everybody else's stuff. And had someone put an advertisement on TV that I could have just worn a covering, it would have helped me a lot. And I see a lot of sensitive teens out there, and they think that this is oppressive. Yeah, you see, that's why they wear their hoodies a lot of time. Actually, they're trying to protect themselves. And yeah,
because some people see it as the oppressive for women. They don't know it's protective.
They don't know.
Oh my God. In your testimony, it's a protection.
And it holds the light in. And so I feel like my practice, everything has increased since I've been wearing it. And
Mashallah.
Yeah. So I didn't want, I wanted to do it because I was told, but I also wanted to know why. So there was an ego death in there. Yeah, that was part of my suluk early on. You will wear this to the grocery store and let everyone look at you. You will be the only one. And that's okay. And it really grew my practice.
Because I understand you also experienced some of that not really nice experience when people look at you and treat you. Yeah.
Like I live in a place this is very, very closed to. And I'm thankful that there are a lot of reasons I'm thankful I was initiated where I was, but one of the beautiful gifts has been the very colorful hijabs. That's, because my area, they only know all black. And they see that as a terrorist, somebody that's going to blow them up. And so I'm walking around with these very colorful things and an American and they don't know what to do. And I'm happy and you know, I don't have a gun.
And you smile and you're just like, and you walk.
So it's actually it's become a bit of work that I've been doing in my city actually as well, just to walk around.
I remember you said you went to the post office or you went to the airport. You feel the treatment. I mean, like, did that discourage you in a way? What? How did you?
I have, and yes, I've felt. I've been treated horribly, and that's not. It was something that made me sad, and I also realized that I'm a person of European ancestry, and that there are people in the world that is their reality every day. And so it became something that I was really thankful that I experienced. It was very humiliating, and food for thought, and it just put me on the path better. I don't know. It does something with your love for Allah that you choose it anyway. You choose it because you love.
Wonderful. So, jadi gitu jawabannya. Jadi ketika habis syahadat di Indonesia itu memang mursyid itu kasih oleh-oleh jilbab. Banyak teman-teman juga kan kasih, itu biasa buat kita. Setelah kan dia kirim foto, aku datang gitu ke Amerika udah datang terus pakai jilbab terus panjang jalan. Suaminya kaget kan, pergi nggak pakai jilbab, datang oh pakai apa ini? Terus kita takutnya gini ya, kita tuh nggak memaksakan, keluarga itu foundation gitu. Jadi jangan sampai merusak harmoni di antara keluarga. Sampai mursyidku bilang nggak perlu pakai dulu gitu. Terus lah ya mursyid sampai I was told by mursyid tell Ashley it's not.
It doesn't have to.
It doesn't. It's I already told her. But she chose to anyway, so it's just like it's okay. It's a choice.
It's also adab for the tariqah. And to honor where it came from. I chose to do that.
Jadi setelah chat itu dia pakai jilbab aja terus. Nah, tentu anak-anaknya pada kaget, terus kadang malu gitu kalau lagi ke mall, semua orang memandang gitu kan. Setelah, wow, bisa nggak lepas? Is it anyone one of your kids asked him, "Can you not wearing hijab?" Or oh.
Yes, that was
How
asked.
did you?
What did I do? I don't remember. You helped me actually early on, because there are some days that it did feel, I would get some guidance of just wear a winter hat and a scarf, and I didn't know that's kind of very modified something, still
to cover
covered.
it. Yeah.
And so I did that a couple of times when it would, be weird. But my oldest daughter, she's very independent. She does her own thing. And we walked around the mall one day, and I had one of the what do you call it? The instant hijabs that I gotten as a gift.
Yeah.
Is bubblegum pink. And so we're walking around the mall, and lo and behold, maybe 3 Muslim people I've never seen in Birmingham. And there was this little like 14-year-old girl. She's in a hijab, and she looked at me like, yeah, and Natalie was walking next to me, and she got her cookie and whatever else she needed that day, and I think we both just realized, it's not a thing. And since then, I have spoken to many people. I've done some posts on it, that in the history of Christianity, Miriam, she's where her head is covered in all of the pictures. There are particular sects of Christianity even today that will veil. Judaism, in its strict form, veils. They wear wigs, but it's for the same purpose. And so it's actually a wisdom that we have forgotten, and I think we have suffered because of it. When people in the West are very unhappy, we talk about bad spirits and whatnot. There are all sorts of things flying about, and
jadi pengalamannya jilbab itu melindungi, dia bilang. Seandainya aku tahu sejak awal sih, remaja kan biasanya udah mulai beger gitu, orang mulai lihat badan kita. Itu kalau pakai hijab tuh kayak kita dilindungi gitu. Sesuatu yang testimoni kan, orang melihat Islam, perempuan harus pakai hijab, seperti seolah-olah ditindas. Padahal dalam testimoninya dia justru itu melindungi dan keep the light inside, something like that. And you said. Jadi dia mengenakannya dengan sepenuh jiwa dan senang sekali gitu. Dan dia bilang, ada periode ketika anak-anaknya agak aneh, tentu saja butuh waktu, tapi lama-kelamaan mereka paham. Dan dia bilang, aku tetap ibumu dan aku melakukan semua hal yang sama gitu, dan mulai punya respect tentang itu. So, last question because we need to go. Kita perlu pergi, dan Telin silakan.
Yeah, actually, I just want to say I'm really, really, really jealous with you, Ashley, but in positive way. In positive way. I feel like I cherish your story. I cherish your experience, because everyone has own path and experience when they search for Allah. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for reminding that we, as often as we can, remember zikir, because now I'm in front of the grocery store. I'm going to do shopping, and Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Yang mana ya Allah, masak
the
apa ya Allah,
vegetable and the fruits. Thank you so much for reminding. See you Ashley. Inshallah, we can see each other.
Yeah, we plan to go back to Paris. We love Paris.
Inshallah. Okay. Thank you. Assalamualaikum.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah. Semoga sahabat-sahabat bisa meraih kebaikan, hikmah yang banyak dari kisah sahabat kita. Mungkin minggu depan kita bisa share lagi, karena Rabu dia pulang, Wednesday you go home. Or maybe we can start earlier, hari Senin gitu. Tunggu pengumuman berikutnya, kita lihat, we work with the flow, gimana schedule yang pas. Tapi boleh satu orang volunteer, apa yang kesan, semua udah dapat kesan, satu lagi mungkin apa yang paling dari pengalaman seorang mu'alaf ini. Yang lain mungkin Ada, boleh silakan. Ada Pak Agung nih, aduh nih yang paling ganteng ya, rajin Pak Agung ini. Monggo, ada yang lain mau mengucap sesuatu hal yang ngena gitu. Bu Syarifah, silakan. Makassar.
Ya, terima
Monggo,
kasih.
silakan Bu. Silakan Ibu. Makassar.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Saya pakai
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi
Mbak
wabarakatuh.
Ashley
Alhamdulillah.
saya ya saja ya. Saya sudah
Ya ya.
memasangkan nama Mbak Ashley saja. Saya merasa apa ya, Ashley dalam 6 bulan itu sudah mampu selalu meletakkan Allah gitu, meletakkan Allah, memasang jilbab. Ya Allah, tolong ajari saya berjilbab. Mungkin apalagi ya Allah, tolong. Jadi seakan-akan Allah itu selalu dekat, walaupun memang sebenarnya Allah itu dekat, lebih dekat
Memang
dari
sangat
Rasul ya.
betul. Ya, ya.
Tetapi saya mau ini dalam 6 bulan setelah
Syahadat.
mengucapkan syahadat itu Ashley sudah langsung bisa selalu meletakkan Allah gitu. Nah, saya yang sudah berapa ini saya baru belajar gitu mau ke sini. Ya Allah, saya mau ini. Ya Allah, walaupun nanti hilang lagi gitu. Nanti terus masuk lagi ya Allah. Tapi saya apakah selalu seperti itu? Dan sebelum 6 bulan itu gimana? Apakah memang sudah memulai menggunakan kata Allah atau nanti setelah mengucapkan syahadat? Setelah itu Allah mulai mendekat pada Ashley seperti
ya.
itu, karena saya sangat ini sekali kok memasang jilbab. Ya Allah, tolong ajari saya. Mungkin kalau mau pergi, ya Allah, saya mau pergi bersama
Kita nggak
saudara.
pernah ya tanya Allah, ya Allah tolong ajari pakai jilbab, udah kayak gitu aja otomatis.
Nanti tersadar kembali, tersadar.
Yes.
Allah, saya lupa minta izin padamu.
Yeah,
Nah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Alhamdulillah. So it was wondrous. It was one of the most impressive things you saw about you, that the way you try to communicate to Allah in many ways. Yeah, even in like Allah, show me how to wear hijab, and then you ask Allah. The question would be, does it happen before also shahada, and what did change, and then since when you call God with Allah?
Allah came with Sidi. He's the one that
with
the
Sidi.
zikr. Yes, that was the introduction. It's a greater understanding. The Christian God, it's the same, but it's like the inner world is, it's so much bigger. The light is so much stronger because it has the Tawheed in it, the unity in it. And so that's a piece of it. And this is like the rest of it.
Right.
How did everything change with Shahada? There was I don't know how to explain it, but it's like the walking felt much more supported or something. There was like an engine behind it.
Right. Like extra boost.
Yeah, there is something that happens with the Shahada.
I see. Right.
That's good.
Right.
It's very important.
Call. I mean, you used to even before Shahada, you dialogue. I mean, you talk to God in many ways. It becomes
and as I'm walking the path, a lot of it is learning to distinguish his voice and to purify that channel. And because some of it we can limit what he says to us by what we know, by what we believe that we're capable of, that he's capable of. And then there are other voices that can get in there that can sound exactly like him. Yeah,
but it's not.
Yeah, but it's not.
Yeah, very tricky.
And so that's part of Suluk. Yeah, it's why it's so, the path is so wise and it's so beautiful, and
you have to zikr many times.
It cleans. It knows everything that's going to happen before it's going to happen.
That's right.
So you're being cleaned and trained.
Yeah, that's why this mana-mana bawa tasbih, zikir terus ya. Jadi dia udah biasa dialog sama Allah bahkan sebelum syahadat, tapi dia bilang habis syahadat itu kayak ada boost, ada energi lain. Kalau sebelum itu dia panggil Tuhan dengan nama lain, itu memang ada sebuah kekuatan, tapi begitu tauhid memanggil Allah itu seperti wah, kekuatannya dahsyat gitu. Dan tapi dia juga sadar bahwa untuk mendengar suara Tuhan di dalam diri itu tricky. Karena ada suara hawa nafsu, ada suara yang lain gitu. Nah, makanya harus banyak zikir, istighfar dan lain sebagainya. Terus ya dia bawa tasbih kemana-mana, zikir setiap saat, zikir di kendaraan, zikir sambil nunggu pesawat, zikir, semua zikir. Jadi zikron katsira itu yang disebut dalam Al-Qur'an juga sebagai kunci untuk bertemu Allah gitu ya, dalam tajalli ilahiyah gitu. Walau alam.
This question I didn't answer this.
Yeah,
I can answer this part real quick. If there.
Yeah.
About the how do you know you're not intoxicated by a spirit, or how do you deal with the spiritual roller coaster? For me, this in my life is the one thing that has remained always. Other things would come and go, and it would always come back to this. And it wasn't until later I found out my mother had dedicated me to Allah, which I think helped, but it was just always there. And I have gone through in Christianity, a part of it is healing. And so there are different things that I've done over the years to heal beliefs, or to heal traumas, or to heal, my family lineage, things like this. But then you always go back to Allah. And at the beginning of that walking, when everything kind of fell off, it was the Bible. And so I was just reading. I went back. So when things get crazy, when they get strung out, when you go off and have a crazy experience, go to the Quran. Go. You need to ground and sweep the floor. Allah also will have me usually actually will wipe baseboards, hands and knees.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think it's a valid question, and there are parents that have concerns there, and it happens sometimes. And I think if you feel like that is happening with someone, then ask Allah to bring somebody that might be able to help.
Yeah, that's right. Gitu Mbak Meta ya. Jadi gimana bisa tahu ini bukan kerasukan atau apa tuh, suara-suara aneh, halusinasi mungkin ya. Ya makanya harus ada Quran sama Sunnah. Apapun perintahnya, kalau itu bertentangan dengan Quran Sunnah, tolak. Gitu. Itu syariah, itu pagar. Itu yang menjaga. Dan kita nggak boleh, kita melambung tapi nggak boleh melupakan dunianya. Dia bilang kadang dia harus ngerjain pekerjaan rumah, hal-hal seperti itu harus jalan terus gitu. Bukan berarti kita pengen bersuluk kemudian semua jadi terbengkalai, keluarga terbengkalai, nggak begitu. Jadi pohon toibah itu kan akarnya kuat di tanah ya. Jadi apapun yang kita terima dari Allah Ta'ala dalam kehidupan, pegang dengan baik, manage dengan baik, baru dahannya bisa ke atas dengan baik. Almost 2 hours, never happened before, because I always limit myself 1 hour. So, but thank you. This is banyak pelajaran di sini. Semoga minggu depan masih ada waktu, mumpung masih di sini sih Mbak nih sampai Rabu, insya Allah. Baik sahabat-sahabat, terima kasih buat partisipasinya. Semoga bermanfaat. Mari kita sama-sama tutup dengan doa akhir majelis. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika, asyhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Boleh bagi yang kesempatan buka kamera, boleh. Ada yang bisa ambil biar nanti di screenshot, so we say goodbye tuh. Terima kasih ya semuanya. Halo Telin, mari Su, mari Bu Syarifah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you everyone.
Sampai
Pamit
jumpa.
dulu ya. Udah Mbak Tini tuh, so it's Paris. Ya, Mbak Vidi, apa kabar ya? Pamit dulu ya. Mari semuanya. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.